The Ferdinand Town Council responds to allegations made by the town's former police chief. Residents living near Beaver Lake make their voices heard. And Kurt Guxell talks IU baseball and the College World Series ahead in sports. Those stories and much more are up next here on 18 WJTS News. Hello, I'm Bradford Raths. In your news, last night the Ferdinand Town Council presented a letter in response to public allegations following last month's resignation of former police chief Ted Beaver. The letter, written by Town Council President Ken Steekart in response to recent editorials in the Ferdinand News, written by Beaver and his wife, outlined several of the allegations made in Beaver's resignation letter, which was read at last month's council meeting, and gave the council's side of the story on several of the allegations. One of the allegations that was addressed at last night's meeting was that Beaver never really knew that his position was in jeopardy. Steekart says that he has records of several meetings with Beaver dating back to the early days of Beaver's tenure as Ferdinand's police chief concerning various issues within the department.
I have a number of records from my early days with Ted being in the office, probably 2 years into his term. We started to meet because there was problems that I was being told about. So I started to meet with him on a kind of regular basis. A lot of them I kept records of, my notes and my agenda that I was following, what we talked about, and that's what I brought up. I think I had 8 to 10 different meetings there where we had talked about different things, and these are the ones I can document, so those are the ones that I bring up.
A second allegation that was addressed during the meeting was one made by Beaver in his letter that he couldn't purchase items that cost over $500, even with the approval of the council, without first obtaining the town manager's written consent on a purchase order. Steekart says this rule applies to all departments in the town of Ferdinand and was not exclusive to the police department.
That is true of all departments. It was something we set up, actually I looked tonight, it was set up back in 2008 because what we were trying to do is copy what businesses do. A business doesn't allow all their employees to go out and spend money. There's a process. You have to do a purchase order. So we set up a purchase order, gave our supervisors the ability to do a purchase order for up to $500. After $500, they have to present it to the town manager who signs off on it, and then they can go ahead and get it.
Following the reading of the letter, 2 members of the public in attendance spoke in support of Beaver being reinstated as police chief, with one of the speakers even demanding that Beaver be reinstated at that meeting, showing a petition that he had started in the town, which had gathered 300 signatures. In other news from last night's meeting, the council heard that Regal Construction of Newburgh is prepared to move forward with work on the town's pedestrian and bicycle trail project. Regal will start work on the project on July 8th, with a target completion date around the weekend of the Ferdinand Folk Festival. If that date cannot be reached, the final date for the completion of the project would be October the 15th. Finally, last night, the council heard that the Indiana Office of Community and Rural Affairs has released the grant money for the work to be done on the historic Wollenman House. Pat Sager Construction of Huntingburg will be handling the restoration work on the house, which will include rewiring work. The project bid at $325,000, which is higher than the expected cost at the outset. Roughly 100 residents of Jasper were in attendance at the Beaver Lake Project public hearing held at the Arnold Habig Community Center last night. The open forum meeting allowed the community to voice their concerns regarding the low level of the lake. This became an issue with the installation of the new spillway. Citizens, primarily those living on Beaver Lake, came forward at the meeting to explain how much the lake level had dropped recently and how it has affected their docks, boats, and most importantly, their safety and peace of mind. Many brought in pictures and diagrams of how low the lake level had dropped along their docks. The levels were fairly consistent for each person that spoke, most ranging from 8 to 12 inches lower due to the new spillway. Nearly 200 docks lie alongside the shores of Beaver Lake, most standing far above the water level, making dock owners struggle to step in and out of their boats or pontoons. Safety trumped the numerous trepidations of the people in attendance, however. Numerous stumps are now exposed due to the lower water level. This causes a liability to the city of Jasper, as the stumps have also become petrified over the years, making a collision more serious due to the concrete-like structure of the stumps, impairing leisurely boat rides, fishing, and swimming. Although recreational activities were a popular point of discussion, John Gunselman, a property owner along Beaver Lake, says the decrease in water level at Beaver Lake could wreak havoc, as the lake is also utilized as a water reserve for the city.
As a child, having all the good times out at Beaver Lake, I understand it's a recreation, but it's also a water reserve for Jasper, and that was some of my concerns tonight, is that we've actually seen a decrease in the water level. And my concerns were maybe we should have looked at increasing the capacity of Beaver Lake for our city needs. Last August we were rationing water in Jasper, and we could have used this water.
There is a 42-inch discharge pipe in the dam that bypasses the new spillway to allow for water to fill in if necessary. The new spillway was created on a scale to allow for 27 inches of water buildup to be drained from the lake in a 6-hour period. With no clear explanation as to why the lake is nearly a foot lower after the construction of the new spillway, Gunselman stressed how crucial it is that the Jasper community works together to figure out a solution to the problem.
I think the biggest thing about the meeting tonight is that we need to work together as a team, the city, politicians, the mayor, the utility board, the people who use Beaver Lake. I just think we all need to take a step back, come to a conclusion. I think the conclusion tonight is that the water level is down, and now let's just attack it as a team versus individual, efforts. I think that's the smart thing.
If you have pictures or comments regarding the lower water levels at Beaver Lake, you are encouraged to drop that information off at the Water Department at Jasper City Hall. All pertinent information will be carefully reviewed by the Water Department and the Utility Board, and possible plans to move forward with the issue will be discussed in more depth at the next Utility Board meeting. Members of the Jasper Country Club advisory team gathered yesterday morning in the Pfaffenweiler room of Jasper City Hall to hear a site analysis presentation from representatives of Gamble Associates and City Visions Associates on the potential use of the Jasper Country Club property recently acquired by the City of Jasper. The 19-member advisory team assembled by Jasper Mayor Terry Seitz consists of city residents and officials, council members, at least one representative from both the Greater Jasper Consolidated School Corporation and the Jasper Library Board, as well as Mayor Seitz himself. The Louisville-based City Visions and Boston-based Gamble Associates were hired by the city to help determine the use of 60 acres of land that was purchased from the former Jasper Country Club back in April. David Gamble, principal owner of Gamble Associates, says the committee and his group are looking at different ways the former country club site can be enhanced even more than it was as a golf course. He says one of the purposes of the meeting was for the committee to get a better understanding of the site's capacity.
We know it's 62 acres, and it seems like a big area. But once you start to look at the topography, the wetlands areas, the tree canopy, it starts to diminish that amount of real estate. So it was really a test to see how much property is available to be developed in whatever way, and how do you get there, and what are the constraints and opportunities relative to the site. So we're trying to, at this point, tread lightly on the earth and think about ways in which new programs could help to revitalize the site.
Meanwhile, Mayor Seitz says it was interesting how the group's findings showed the different comparisons of how golf courses revert back to the community.
I really enjoyed the vast opportunities of basically doing nothing, and the example that was shared of here's the first tee and green of this golf course in Ohio, and here it is 8 years later, and they did nothing but just let nature take over, to the extreme of North Las Vegas, which is doing an extraordinary sports and entertainment complex to far beyond dollars we'd ever consider, and things in between. And I really like that because it gave us some real world examples, including Richmond, Indiana, who's also kind of reverting a golf course.
Seitz says one of the more productive aspects of the meeting was input shared by board members and other potential partners in use of the land.
And hopefully, again, that's what this advisory team is about. Whether it works out that all elements represented are on that in a campus fashion, or that we have them in discussion and say, look, it fits in us to do something different or to stand pat, that's great. Our biggest mistake would be not to involve all the people on the discussion.
The next step for the advisory committee will be a concept, plans, and public process workshop, which is planned for later this summer. Yesterday morning, Jasper Street Commissioner Ramey Eckerly presented the Jasper Board of Public Works with a list of proposed street projects for the city this year. Every year around March, street department personnel travel city streets for their annual inspection, which is a practice that has gone on for a number of years. The department has identified streets in need of repair and resurfacing. Some of those streets are considered in critical condition, some are in poor condition, while others are marginal. Altogether, the city has come up with over $4.8 million in projects in need of some repair. Of that amount, $1.2 million in projects were approved by the board for the street department to tackle this year. The board also gave the go-ahead for the department to conduct some preventative maintenance projects. They include the applying of liquid road, which is an asphalt liquid road surface coating similar to seal coating, but is thicker, more durable, and designed to wear and last longer than ordinary seal coating. The city has 13 proposed liquid road projects for this year. Also, microsurfacing is a modified asphalt emulsion surface course containing fine aggregate to aid in wear and durability of the surface coating. Microsurfacing has been applied to several streets in Jasper since 2010 with satisfactory results. The city has proposed 6 such microsurfacing projects for this year. Finally, 19 street projects have been slated for the applying of an asphalt rejuvenating agent that is applied by spray application of a cationic rejuvenating agent composed of petroleum oils and resins with water. The liquid road work will be done by city employees, while microsurfacing and asphalt rejuvenating work will be handled by contract. Eckerly says the street department is always researching and investigating new ways to stretch its paving dollars and protecting the city's pavement.
We got to stay on top of our streets. It's one of the most critical infrastructures we have, and if we don't catch them at the right time, we let them go. And then instead of spending $1 to repave a street, we're spending $5 for that same one to kind of put it in perspective. It really gets expensive once we let it go so far. There's things we really look out for and distress signals that we look out for, and those are identified in that synopsis that we gave the board this morning.
Eckerly says work is underway in several areas, including storm sewer work on Klimper Road, which will be undergoing a major widening project this year. Another widening project being completed along Sunshine Drive, both on the city's west side. Other preventative maintenance and repaving projects will be completed as the paving season progresses. Tomorrow, the Ferdinand Community Center will be hosting a new community conversation featuring researcher Catherine Laughlin. This follows a 3-part series of community conversations last fall. Those sessions each focused on a different aspect of the theme, the importance of place. The topic of this community conversation will be Soul of the Community, Factors that Attach Residents to Their Communities, which is in response to a study done by Laughlin for the Knight Foundation on what attaches people to their community. Vincennes University Jasper Campus Dean Dr. Alan Johnson says the idea for this event was born out of last year's series of conversations where the effect of the Super Bowl was examined.
This topic came to the front as an extension of the community conversation sessions that we did last fall when we looked at the effect of the Super Bowl and how you engage your residents. We looked at the community asset inventory, and we looked at the works being done by the Hometown Competitiveness Program. And this is just a natural extension. Several of us had read about this study, and we were able to contact Dr. Laughlin and ask her to come in to speak and to do some seminar work with local officials.
Johnson says the significance of this study lies in getting people involved in moving their communities forward in the future.
The significance of this is that we get more people engaged in the community affairs and in moving this community forward. And by community, I mean the entire county and all the cities and towns within it.
Another community conversation is being planned for November. Coming up after the break, a cool down is on the way in your local forecast, sports with Kurt Guxell, and Inform featuring St. Henry Heinrichsdorf Fest coordinator Josh Meyer. That's all up next here on 18 WJTS News. Local people watching local people.